Good evening, and welcome to Deep Space Wine, a Star Trek podcast with myself, Tim Sinister, and my co-host, Catherine.
Hello.
How are you doing, Kat?
I'm very well, thank you. I've watched an episode of Deep Space Nine and I'm really excited to talk about it.
Fantastic. And it falls on a very auspicious day, because on this day, 1948, Avery Brooks, who portrays Commander Benjamin Sisko, was born. So a very happy 75th birthday to Avery Brooks.
Happy birthday, Avery.
So that is a wonderful, auspicious event for us to celebrate. I also want to thank Kat, my co-pilot, for this wonderful gift they've got me. And I will hold that up to the camera. I am an official friend of Garak. So many thanks, Kat, for this gift. And it shall be here as my communicator for the rest of the stream. So thank you so very much. So, good evening, everyone in the chat. There's Nigel, Izzy, and Kat. Wonderful. And yes, this is our my rewatch of Deep Space Nine, because I saw it when it was first syndicated in the 90s, but Kat has never seen it, so this is their first watch through of Deep Space Nine, which is where a lot of the enjoyment comes from. Kat will see things for the first time and share their wonderful new opinion, and I can grizzle and grump all over it and say, well, it's not as good as it was at the time.
Isn't it a good thing that I was never up to date with TV and popular culture?
It's wonderful. It's a throwback to happier times. To bring us up to speed, we are now on to episode 5 of season 1, which is Captive Pursuit. And as always, we alternate the intro and the plot synopsis. So I will hand over to Kat to now give us the plot synopsis for this episode, please.
Woohoo! First up, content warnings. This episode contains some brief discussion of sexual harassment. There are some phaser battles. Phasers are fired and people are knocked down. Imprisonment and a person held captive. So, in this episode, I can hear that wine glugging. That's an amazing sound. No, it's great. Right, a damaged, unidentified vessel from the Gamma Quadrant on the other side of the wormhole comes through the wormhole, and after some arguments between the DS9 staff and the pilot, it docks at the Deep Space Nine dock for repairs. Its reptilian pilot, identified only as Tosk, is the first known life form from the Gamma Quadrant to visit the station. Chief Miles O'Brien suspects that Tosk is running from something due to evidence of weapons fired on his vessel, although Tosk insists that the damage was sustained due to the wormhole. O'Brien befriends Tosk and tries to help him repair his ship. However, Tosk attempts to steal from a weapons locker and is put in a holding cell by Security Chief Odo. Uniformed aliens arrive through the wormhole, beam onto DS9, and start a phaser battle with a team led by Commander Benjamin Sisko. The aliens fight their way into the brig where Tosk is being held. Sisko, O'Brien, and Odo enter the room as one of the aliens expresses his disappointment at finding Tosk captured alive. Tosk, it transpires, is the alien hunter's quarry. The hunter commands Sisko to lower the force field and release Tosk, but Sisko refuses. They discuss the issue, and the hunter agrees to place the wormhole out of bounds for future hunts. As much as he detests this practice, Sisko believes that under the Prime Directive, the law forbidding interference with alien cultures, he must release Tosk to the aliens. After talking to the bartender Quark, O'Brien realizes that just as the Ferengi can change any rules they dislike, he too could try to change the rules of the hunt before Tosk is taken away by the hunters. He lies to Odo and convinces him to release Tosk into his care, claiming that it is a Starfleet, not a security matter. O'Brien escorts the hunter and Tosk to an airlock, but the chief has it rigged to overload, knocking out the hunter, allowing O'Brien to help Tosk escape. Back in ops, Sisko is informed about the situation and tells Odo to pursue the duo at a leisurely pace, giving O'Brien time to help Tosk escape the station with the hunters in pursuit. Later, an angry Sisko reprimands O'Brien for his actions. The chief expresses his surprise at not having been apprehended immediately by Odo, and Sisko claims that he must have slipped up this time, and he smiles wryly after O'Brien has left his office. Roll credits.
Roll credits. Wonderful. Thank you so much, Kat. A exemplary summary of the episode.
Thank you, Wikipedia.
Yes, thank you very much. I think we
We
both...
do a lot of analysis in these episodes.
We
We ain't
do.
got time to be writing up a full thing. Well, someone else has already done it. Why reinvent the transporter, you know?
What a brilliant metaphor as well. Excellent. I love it. But you're absolutely right. The whole point of this podcast is to give you and I the chance to dig into the meat of the episode. So a quick summary somebody else has already prepared. Absolutely ideal. So, no, that was absolutely exemplary. Obviously, we've had some pre-chat about this episode as well whilst we were waiting for 8 p.m. to roll round. But let's dig through the episode as we would normally. We'll go through it scene by scene and pick out the bits that we like and discuss them, and then at the end we can have some summing up and broad opinions. So, thank you for obviously flagging that rather sensitive scene at the top of the episode, right in the cold open. Cisco is he's talking to a Dabo girl, who are obviously the attendants of the casino in Quark's establishment. And it's danced about. We talked about the language where everyone keeps getting instructed before they can say things like harassment or, you know, any kind of like enforced intimacy or lots of words.
I think she basically says that Quark had been harassing her since a few minutes after she arrived on board the station.
That's right.
Quark said that is part of the job. And she points out, look, it's there in the Ferengi print of my contract rather than small print. Apparently in their universe, Ferengi print is the term for it. Let's see, yes, instead of small print. Page 21, subsection D, paragraph 12. And neither of them actually says she is required to have sex, required to perform any particular services. It's really danced around by the two, but it's heavily implied. Yeah. And then Cisco insists to her that he will talk to Quark about this, whether it's in a contract or no. Nobody else is going to have to abide by that part of the contract anymore. But I felt that scene was a little odd in this episode. It's not brought up again. Quark appears in the episode, and that's never raised with him. I think it might be there because there is an issue of contractual obligation, but it isn't a Ferengi who changes it. It's a Ferengi who's written a contract that has to be changed because it's immoral. It's a very strange choice, I think, and I wonder whether it was going to be picked up later and they didn't have time to return to it.
Yeah, it is very strange because it doesn't connect to anything else in this episode, as you say. All I can think is it possibly laying the groundwork for Cisco intervening in another culture when he feels it's right? You know, he will override this Ferengi contract requiring favours from staff, and he overrides the Hunter's cultural policy of hunting Tosk. And
except that, as we will discover, Cisco doesn't really do that.
He doesn't really know.
Cisco allows someone else to do that. Whereas in this case, it might be a foreshadowing. In this case, he is willing to intervene, absolutely. This is something happening aboard his station. He will not permit it to continue happening aboard his station. And it is at least it is a nice cultural artifact in that a woman comes forward, she is immediately believed, he's immediately on her side, and he immediately says the problem ends here. He doesn't say that she has to leave if she dislikes it, or that's just what the Ferengi are like. It's dealt with in a no-nonsense way. So although it's a little jarring here at the start of a Star Trek episode, it is at least very quickly dealt with, and we trust that Cisco is resolving it.
Yeah, absolutely. I do think it's something that will crop up again. Because, as we've observed, it's a Ferengi cultural thing, so, it's going to crop up again, and I'm sure this is an ongoing thing to have to deal with. Nizzy correctly points out that as a Ferengi who's not a citizen of the Federation, technically that's Quark's cultural thing, but I think you could legally get around it by saying, well, he operates on a Bajoran-owned Federation-run station, so Federation law has to kind of apply there, and that, grants an inalienable... if you pardon the pun, inalienable right to, aliens, anyone
to bodily
on the station.
Everyone has bodily autonomy aboard the vessel. You cannot, as Quark frequently does, just lay your hands on any female. Freaking Quark.
Absolutely grotesque, But thankfully, we've done some nice work there, and now we're into the real meat of the Federation's mission, which is meeting strange new lives, and it is our first visitor from the Gamma Quadrant. And it is completely the opposite, I think, of what the crew were hoping for, because Tosk is very very abrupt, very non-communicative, very suspicious and confused. And it's O'Brien who bridges the gap there and is like, I'm going to save your ship, friend. Sit back
because I
and
think when
enjoy
it
the
comes through the
ride.
wormhole, he says the structural integrity of the vessel is compromised, that if he keeps his engines going, it's going to break apart. So he has to explain to him, look, we're going to get you with the tractor beam. The gravitational pull of the tractor beam will hold your ship together until it's aboard Deep Space Nine. Then we can fix it. So yeah, he's the one who talks the new alien through the process and gets him to trust that they actually mean him well. And there's a lovely little bit of camera work in that scene. We only see the alien through the view screen aboard DS9. And when we first see his vessel, the camera's shaking all over the place. He's clearly trying to sit still and the camera's moving around a lot. And they say, okay, cut your engines. And when he does, it moves around a little bit less.
Down, yeah.
And then finally, when the tractor beam grabs it, it stops completely. It's just a really nice tying in of what's happening in the script and how the viewer is invited to perceive it happening. It feels like it's real at each stage of the process. It's just a nice detail.
It is, and we've talked about this before, that the way they shoot certain scenes is kind of a bit more exploratory than they might have done in Star Trek previously. And I think they do it later on in this episode, actually, as well.
Yes.
But we'll get to that. But there are some wonderful angles there, definitely. Sit back and enjoy the ride, says Brian, which I just found as such like a dad joke, don't worry, I'll bring you on the tractor beam. You sit back.
You just sit there, I'll do the work.
It's so un-Star Trek as well, which really boggled me at the time. But I can see how that would be very reassuring, actually, so... and he carries that on when Sisko sends him down, obviously, to the dock to meet him, because he feels they've already built a rapport. And he comes into Tosk's ship, does O'Brien, and he can't see Tosk. And he says, I've come to fix your ship, friend. And in my notes I say, he talks to Tosk. Well, we don't know his name yet, but he talks to the visitor like you would talk to a cagey cat. Very reassuring.
Yeah, you don't know which piece of furniture he might be hiding under, so he just
exactly
it just kind of keeps his talk rolling to him as he's going by, just saying, I'm not going to hurt you, I'm just going to have a look at your engine.
Yes.
It's really nice.
I liked it. And there's a great angle there, actually, when O'Brien's getting under the ship console. The camera angle is looking up from the floor, from this hatch that opens, up to O'Brien, which also sets up that lovely scene where O'Brien bunks his head.
Yes, so you can see past O'Brien into the room, and suddenly Tosk appears. He's been invisible, and it's like a Romulan ship decloaking, and he's walking towards O'Brien a little bit cautiously, and then he suddenly says something about the engine to him, and O'Brien's just shocked. The Caladrian flow is damaged, and O'Brien whacks his head on the panel above. It's a really sweet moment.
It is lovely. Thank you.
Oh, and O'Brien responds, "You can't go sneaking up on someone like that, friend. It's an Alpha Quadrant rule."
Quite right. Absolutely. I think it's a perfect combination of common sense and diplomacy. Well, this is our custom here, that we don't scare the bejesus out of people by appearing out of nowhere in a small room,
I did note, though, that in this episode we've got a lot of lovely dialogue from O'Brien, and he is the main character in the episode, effectively beside Tosk. But the one word that he keeps adding to what he says to reassure him is friend. And if you're in the UK or Ireland and someone kept calling you friend at the end of every sentence, you'd know you're about to get beaten up.
Yes, that's a very good point.
But in this context, it works really nicely. It flows very naturally with his natural sentences, and he just puts it in there to make the alien feel at ease.
Which I think he does very well, and they quickly build a rapport. But yes, I can certainly say if I was in a pub somewhere and somebody kept saying, I'm just going to get you a drink, friend. And I'd be like, right, okay, I'm going to drink up and I'm going to go now. Thank you also to Izzy on the facts there, reminding me that O'Brien is actually not an officer. He's an enlisted man. Chief of Operations. I think he's like a petty officer, like a Navy rank, but he's not an officer. He's like an enlisted man. So,
right. So is that kind of the difference between being a civilian and being...
it's in between,
Starfleet.
really. Yeah. Starfleet, we only ever see the officers, the ones with the round pips on their collar, and they're all, heads of departments, senior officers, and O'Brien being an enlisted man is, it's more like a kind of... It's a tricky explanation. It is very military-esque, which is not very Star Trek, but Starfleet does operate on military rank, and basically it just means that O'Brien has to take orders from anybody with a pip on their neck. Although he's like the chief engineer of the station, he's like, yeah, in the ranks, rank and file, a common soldier, as you were. But honestly, I don't think it has much bearing on the storyline of Star Trek. He's the main character, and that's what matters most.
It is interesting, though, thinking about where he sits compared with the others and what power he does not have. He gets ordered around a lot. He doesn't get to make tactical decisions often.
That's absolutely right. That is it. That is a very good point. Yeah, it's very rare that O'Brien will be in charge of anything, despite the fact that he clearly knows the most about keeping the station running.
There were a couple of other things I wanted to note about this scene. Firstly, that when we first encounter Tosk, the universal translator immediately and smoothly translates everything both to and from him, despite him being the very first alien from the Gamma Quadrant to be encountered. So I think it's just one of those points where we have to kind of smudge over the science a little bit, because I think some of the later shows, Strange New Worlds does do quite a lot of linguistic digging. You can tell which planet a Klingon comes from by which variant of the Klingon language they use. Uhura has to work out the new languages of some aliens that they encounter. But here the universal translator just works in every situation for everybody all the time, unless you want to say something in another language. If you want to speak to someone in another language, it will leave it as you've spoken it.
Yeah, I think it's a wonderful bit of just shorthand to keep the plot moving. You're absolutely right. Whereas I think Strange New Worlds, a great show, wants to give more agency to Uhura, and therefore will deepen the world building and say, okay, actually, yeah, linguistics is a massive, hard, challenging topic, especially when you're talking to alien cultures. So, yeah, it is a bit of a shame that it gets short-handed in places, but you can see why they do it here. They don't have an Uhura. They're just like, we need to get the episode moving. So
absolutely, we just need to talk to this dude. And the other thing I liked is that when O'Brien boards the ship, we get another shot of the lovely Cardassian airlocks, which are like a giant
cog.
What's the word? Yeah, a giant cog just rolling sideways out of the round doorway. It's got so much more physical presence and weight than the usual.
It does.
The sliding doors. I really like it. It's a beautiful piece of design. It's something they didn't have to have in there, but it marks it as being different from other Federation vessels. It's nice.
It is. I think we've touched on this before, but the whole design of Deep Space Nine, clearly not Federation, not human by a long shot, and I think it's wonderful for that. All these dark browns and bronzes and greens. And those
it's very Art Deco in places.
Yes. Yeah, that's an excellent use of it, actually. And I wonder if that's why it appeals to me, because I love Art Deco. But yes, I think it's always a reminder that, this ain't Next Generation.
We're not back in Kansas. Yeah.
You're not. You are, as the whole series was pitched, you were on the frontier. This is a frontier town. It is not civilization, but we are trying to make it so, which is, a wonderful thing. And I love Cardassian design.
O'Brien doesn't so much.
He does not, and that will be our running plot point, it is safe to say. And actually, I feel that segues into those doors swing back, and when you walk through them, bzzz, a great blue force field pops up. I think for the first and last time on the show, but there was a security scanner field, which picks up weapons.
Yeah, I think O'Brien has to. It's quite nice because O'Brien has to explain a lot of aspects of the station to Tosk, to whom everything is completely new. So yeah, at that point in the episode, O'Brien walks through it. It just blips slightly and fizzles, and he explains, "No, it's okay. It went off because I'm carrying the phaser. Oh, I'm just carrying the phaser because it's a defensive weapon, which is something Starfleet often say. The phasers are meant to be defensive, not offensive."
It really feels like a bit of a diplomatic fudge. I mean, a weapon, you can call it a defensive weapon, but I mean,
you're meant to have it set to stun most of the time. You only set it up to the high levels when someone really won't stop. But yeah,
absolutely.
They do all carry guns in this utopian future, unfortunately.
And that is something we will discuss as one of many running trends that DS9 interrogates, analyzes, queries, and throws about the place. So it's going to be very exciting getting to the heart of that. I'm going to welcome... Oh, I'm just going to say hello to Dennis Bloodknock, who's dropped in, who follows me as the Blogging Goth and was expecting presumably more chat about Susie than Deep Space Nine. But
Sorry, Dennis.
this is very much both. And
If it helps, no one aboard DS9 identifies as a goth, making them the most goth people in the quadrant.
Eldritch would be at home there. I love that. And Nigel, yes, Nigel there, very correctly pointing out, we are reminded that Deep Space Nine also wasn't even really a person station, it was a mining station. So very, very utilitarian, unlike the Enterprise, which was designed beautifully with amenities and function and beauty in mind. Was Deep Space Nine, Terok Nor, as it was originally called, was built to serve a purpose, and that purpose was to extract ore as efficiently as possible. So no
That's
fast
a really
doors.
good point. There's a bit of a convention in some fantasy areas, certainly in Skyrim, that dwarves are represented by Art Deco because they are miners, because sharp angles. It might not be a thing here, but I wonder whether that's part of what drove the idea of that design, both of the cog doors moving and the various Art Deco elements in there, that it's a mining station. Good point, Nigel.
Yeah, thank you, Nigel. That's an excellent point, I reckon. And some snark there from Izzy on defensive nuclear weapons. Indeed, deterrent. Actually, if we could just carry on that comparison to the Enterprise, O'Brien at one point describes how DS9 has about 300 people on it.
Yes, compared with 1,000 aboard the Enterprise.
Which is about a fifth of the size. We see the Enterprise docks at the top of one of those pylons, so Deep Space Nine is both much bigger and much less crewed than the Enterprise, which I found quite surprising.
I guess it is, but I think that it's kind of borne out by what we've seen so far, that when something goes wrong somewhere on the ship, Miles O'Brien doesn't have a large staff to command to go to different parts. Sorry, the station, not ship. He doesn't have people to tell to go and fix things. He's the one person who runs around doing all of it. When they first boarded the DS9, sorry, what was it called before DS9?
Terok Nor.
Terok? No. When Cisco first comes aboard, he helps move these sheets of metal around that have fallen from the ceiling. He's helping clear up the mess. I think it does all support there being a relatively skeleton crew aboard DS9. Even though everyone seems to congregate around Quark's bar. But then when we see that bar full, that's probably everyone who's aboard the station at the time.
Can you imagine? Imagine if you're at the top of one of the pylons, it's like, wow, there's nobody for about 1,000 meters in any direction. I would find that a little bit scary myself.
It's true. We haven't seen many scenes of someone walking along deserted, echoing corridors. I haven't.
Yeah, not yet. Not yet, but we absolutely will. And there are some great storylines that play on the fact that actually Deep Space Nine is huge and underoccupied.
Nice.
Izzy makes a very good point that, yes, there are a lot of people passing through Deep Space Nine, so I think a lot of visitors, maybe just the permanent crew of Patrol and Starfleet.
I think in this episode, Miles says that you get 5 or 6 ships a week usually coming and docking. So if you've got the entire complement of those ships coming aboard, wandering around.
Doubled the amount of people on the station. And Nigel there pointing out a lot of the station might be storage. There's a lot of mining areas that don't get used. So, I think there's a lot of the station that doesn't get used for things anymore. But if anything, that just makes it all a bit eerie. There are whole parts of the station that are just deserted. But
thinking about all of those numbers, when Tosk first arrives, his motives are quite obscure. We don't know what he's there for. No. We don't know whether he's a spy, whether he's friendly, whether he comes bearing valuable. We know nothing about him. And he very gently and politely asks Miles about the station. How many people are aboard? How many ships come through? And at this point, you're thinking, oh, why does he need to know that? Why has he gone straight for that information?
No, it's a very good question, and I think they play out Tosk's mystery for as long as they possibly can, which I liked and appreciated. They really kept you guessing about what was going on there.
I think it's only about halfway through the episode that we actually find out what's happening. Right up to that point, Miles is trying to get information out of him, and he's just staying stum. Yeah, the tension is very well maintained.
I thought so as well. No, I'm glad you spotted that as well. Just back on that conversation on the promenade, I like that O'Brien describes the station as flea market to the sector. Flea market. Now, there's a phrase I haven't heard used in a long time.
I loved that. I actually wrote down what he says here. He says he sometimes feels like we're a flea market to the sector, but he goes on to say that the real reason they're there is to keep an eye on the wormhole.
Yes.
And that little summary is a really nice summing up of the two aspects of Deep Space Nine's plot. How it's characters living out their everyday lives in a very shabby, rundown station, and then the big, potentially universe-altering wormhole that sits really nearby. It was just a really nice little summary to give this alien who's just arrived and any new viewers who've just tuned
going
in.
to say that's exactly what it is. I think it also helps, a lot of people who might be like, no, check out this new Star Trek show, what's going on? Well, there it is. And then the chief follows it up by saying, the Federation's here to seek out new life forms. And I'm like, oh, that was almost the speech from the start of Next Generation. So it's very poetically, neatly stitching together, this is what DS9 does, but we're still Star Trek. So I really like that whole speech. I just thought it was lovely, that whole conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. And at a time when people couldn't just go back and watch the first episode if they'd missed it, unless they'd recorded it on a relatively early VCR. It's gone forever. Anything you're going to learn about the show, you're going to learn by watching it from here. So yes, it is quite nicely stitched in, just very neatly and unobtrusively, unless you're looking for it.
Yeah, I thought it was well written, definitely. I think O'Brien trying to sound Tosk out for what he likes to do. Does he eat? No, he keeps his food in fibrous tissues through his body. Sounds grotesque. And I only require 16 minutes of sleep per rotation. And I just immediately felt for Chief. If I don't get my good 8 hours a night, I'm useless. And I'm like, Chief, I feel you. I mean, it was so real. It was so real.
Yeah, absolutely. He remains very. It's really nice that O'Brien was the one sent down to meet this guy because he remains so colloquial and so homely. He is the human aboard this station who isn't in a position of command. He's the most relatable person to most of the audience, and he's a lovely person for Tosk to first meet.
It is such a wonderful episode for those reasons. I think we're now getting away from where this might be something that Picard would do in his very, diplomatic galactic statesman, welcome to the Federation, or
I think Sisko first greets him with kind of, I'm Commander Benjamin Sisko of the United Federation of Planets, and he doesn't relate to that at all. He's just like, who are you? Why are you keeping me?
Yeah, exactly. It's a wonderful way to turn, that Star Trek convention on its head and be like, it's not always going to be formal meetings, handshakes, exchanging of gifts, greetings from this alliance. It's a wonderful turnaround to a convention of Star Trek, which I quite enjoyed.
Yeah, it's really nice. There's a bit where you said that he was kind of gently prodding Tosk to find out what he wants out of life, what he's there for. So he says, so what about you? You're an explorer, a scientist? And Tosk replies, I am Tosk. And he says that often. I assumed that the Marvel comics had already had I am Groot by this point. But it's got that kind of an air to it. Whenever you ask him about himself, he says, is that your species, your name? I am Tosk. Oh, all right then.
Okay. Yeah, I could not claim which came first, but I think they're both drawing from that it's just a comic observation, when one name encompasses a multitude of sins. It's wonderful for that reason.
Yeah, and it's not till very late in the episode that Sisko directly asks, and what does that actually mean? Yeah. Miles just lets it go with, okay, Tosk, that'll do.
But yeah, it's when they press Sisko and he's like, you know what, I've been polite about this, but that means nothing to me. You're going to have to clarify. But we will give Benjamin Sisko time enough to get angry. So yes, the chief's taken Tosk to some guest quarters, and Tosk immediately gets the computer and where are the weapons on the station? And the computer tells him, which I found astonishingly trusting.
He waits for O'Brien to walk away and then immediately goes to the computer to ask where the weapons are. Very sus indeed. There was also a beautiful moment when O'Brien shows him into the quarters and Tosk looks at him questioningly and goes, oh, I wasn't the decorator. And he remains so colloquial and just so homely throughout. It's really sweet.
In an episode of quite a lot of tension, there are lovely little comic bits like that scattered all the way through. And you're right, it is a credit to O'Brien and Colm Meaney, the actor, that he can deliver them so convincingly for, a spaceship show about space, and there's just this wonderful line from man going, hey, yeah, this place looks like a dump, huh? What about that? And you just immediately gel with him, and you're like, yeah, it is. It really is, Chief. You said it.
I think, yeah, this is something I really liked about this episode, that you could have had any character showing you around the ship. I would have expected that Tosk would have been passed from person to person, each of them
Yeah,
trying in their own way to get information out of him.
that would have
But
been.
instead, he stays with Colmini for the entire episode.
Yeah,
It's the chief's job to try and get it out of him, and you would have to completely rewrite the script if you were to put any other character in O'Brien's shoes in this episode, because the whole script is it's in his voice and it's his choice of actions. It's really based in him as a person, and that's really nice. That what could have been a generic sci-fi story is, yeah, it's very personable. It's really sweet. I like it a lot.
I'm really glad. I'm really glad. I think it is very good for establishing O'Brien's character, which obviously season 1 is all about, giving almost all of the characters the chance to actually like kind of lay themselves down and be like, well, this is me now starting out. This is what you come to expect from this character. So I'm glad. Yeah, actually, the Chiefs had 2 in a row, because obviously last time was Babel, which we saw a lot of the Chiefs' job, and now we're seeing a bit more of him as a person who's not like unable to communicate with us and dying of a fever. So yeah, it's a good episode for O'Brien. What have I got next in my notes? I think this is where the chief goes back to ops and he reports back, and he's like, "Yeah, I can immediately tell that Tosk is very nervous and he's keeping things from us. I think he's on the run. He's definitely had a shot taken at his ship. He's lied to us about."
Yeah, because Tosk claimed that was caused by the wormhole itself, and
Indeed.
O'Brien is certain that there's a shot fired at a 45-degree angle. It's gone through to the
Very
fuel.
perceptive. Very perceptive. So that's really kind of hanging a hat on the fact that Tosk, seems wonderfully naive, but he's looking for where the guns are, and the chief has correctly picked up that the guy's keeping stuff from us. So there's now a little bit of tension in the air.
Yeah, so I think Cisco tells O'Brien to stay with him as much as he can, and he'll also get Odo to keep an eye on him from this point on.
That's exactly it.
Then the next scene is
I've got the next scene is them going back to Tosk's ship to do some repairs.
That's right, yes. There's a really nice conversation there between O'Brien and Tosk, with Tosk naming parts of his ship's engine, and then O'Brien giving the familiar Starfleet words for them. So magnetic coils, ram scoop, which I noted is, he says that it's a scoop which captures stellar gases and converts them into usable fuel, which is exactly the mechanism by which the Red Dwarf's engines work. It's a mining vessel out in space. It's got that giant badminton. It probably is a badminton flight on the front of the ship, and that scoops up hydrogen and other gases and converts them into fuel. And that's exactly how Tosk's ship works.
Absolutely, it does. And
which is. I was just going to say, it's nice. It's really sweet that they've got this kind of cultural exchange. Oh, yeah, I recognise that. This is a bit different. I can see how that works. But also, he's from the freaking Gamma Quadrant. Shouldn't it be completely alien to anything that we've ever seen before?
You would think, but I think that's one of the things that Star Trek begs, pleads with you to suspend your disbelief that we have concluded that there's basically one way to get around space, and that is warp travel. There are a few others, but we won't get into them here. The main thing is going to be warp travel, and it's hoped that everyone, comes to it the same as we did the internal combustion engine. And it makes sense, therefore, how it works. And it just makes, I think, stories sometimes a bit easier rather than just opening it up and the chief just goes, you could train me for 20 years and I would not understand what the hell I'm looking at which point the entire episode just grinds to a halt.
It's true. If you wanted to write an extremely extended series of novels about it, then, which people doubtless have, you probably could have more bizarre tech in there. But yeah, they've got 45 minutes to get through a story, so they're damn well going to have very similar technology.
This is it, unfortunately. And Star Trek does play around with it. There are other ways of getting around space. Honourable mention to the Romulans, who use captive black holes instead of warp cores to power their warp drive.
Nice.
They still go to warp, but instead of a warp drive which smashes matter and antimatter together, they use, quantum singularities, which is terribly dangerous, but very Romulan. So there you go. I love this scene because, again, it is Deep Space Nine experimenting with camera angles. These guys are now in the hatch under the floor, and so they're kind of cramped together in this little hole, like, oh yeah, magnetic constrictor coils, and then they have to kind of clamber out of it back into the
And
cockpit.
yeah, and
it
it's
looks,
quite creatively lit
it
as well.
is,
They've
yeah.
got elements of the engine behind
Yeah.
O'Brien that are glowing and
Mm.
lending the light to the characters' faces. It is really right. It's really nicely staged.
And it feels really quite unnecessary as well. They could have just like had a panel come off a wall and look in a hole, but no, they literally have to climb out of this trapdoor. And I think at one point Tosk almost kicks the chief in the head because it's a really narrow space. And like,
But it is nice showing the trust between them, that they do both sit
very
together
close.
happily in this very small space talking about the engine, getting geeky together.
It is a wonderful scene, and I think that is important to establish common ground. You know, these two characters, you know ships, they know starships, they know how they work. It's great. It builds a little bit of a bond between them, which is good character development.
And at the end of that scene, O'Brien says that it'll take a couple of days to replicate the damaged Ava nodes.
Yes.
Tosk says that he doesn't have time for that. And O'Brien says that if they replace the nodes without proper testing and the ship breaks down, Tosk will blame him. And before you know it, O'Brien's work has a bad reputation in the Gamma Quadrant. And Tosk says, I would not blame you. O'Brien says he was just joking, and Tosk says, I cannot tell, O'Brien. And O'Brien replies, I'm sorry, it's in my nature, and you're the most natural straight man I've met in ages. Which is so true, because everyone aboard the ship has so much character. None of them would naturally fall into being the straight man in any given comedy situation. So poor Tosk is it. But it's just really nice. Right. They're both so much at ease with each other.
And it is great. I love that line, you're a natural straight man. He is. And it speaks to O'Brien that he's a natural kidder, joker, you know? Yeah. He's again, I think it is part of that distinction as well between him being a Starfleet officer, you know, high-minded ideals, and a Starfleet enlisted man who's like, I'm learning a trade, I'm doing a trade, I'm a career man, this is just my job, I'm not out here to actually save the galaxy, this is a good job for me. So I think it reminds us that O'Brien's the everyman, as you pointed out earlier. He's very much our surrogate in the show, I think.
Let's see, a little while later, O'Brien is again trying to find out a bit more about Tosk, and he takes him to Quark's bar and says, this is where we have our R&R, rest and relaxation. And Tosk says, you sleep for a third of your rotation while you're awake. You have resting and relaxing. Alpha Quadrant has far too much downtime. Compared with his culture, it's extremely relaxed. Whereas Miles responds, well, tell that to my wife. She hasn't seen me for most of the last 3 weeks.
Again, such a believable moment as well. I think, we would all be like, oh, wow, actually, no, working 8-9 hour shifts every day, minimum, actually, no, that's not. And you know what? I appreciate that, because I would hope in the utopian future of the Federation, we would have a better work-life balance.
Oh, gosh, yes.
And clearly that isn't the case, and the chief is working far too much. So I think it's good that it shines a light on it, actually. Tusk comes from a very different, very martial culture, and I think it's fair to say that the Federation doesn't have that, and the chief would like more time off. And you know what, damn it, he deserves more time off. That man works harder than anybody else on the station.
If he were to suddenly leave the station, the whole thing would fall apart within a week. Give that man a pay rise.
Here. You're absolutely right. Oh, I love that. I want to make a note as well, and I wanted to contrast this again with you, Kat, because I know you're watching TNG alongside this, but Quark's is so loud compared to 10 Forward.
You're right. There's a lot of background chatter, a lot of drinks being lifted and put down, a lot,
Gambling Darbo! And it's such a contrast, I felt, and I wondered what you thought of that.
Definitely, and the ways it's shot as well, because whenever you're in 10 Forward, you're usually at the bar with a view over the whole space, and it's always 2 people to a table, leaning forward, talking very quietly together. Whereas in Quark's bar, you've got, as you say, large parties, gambling, you've got people noisily enjoying their drinks a couple of tables away. It feels more populated. There's been more thought gone into the sound design for the space, I think, what they're going to have happening in that background. And it does work really well. It's never unclear what people are saying, but, there's a lot of background noise behind them.
I thought, there is background noise, and that makes it to me feel very natural. I feel like Quarks is a real place on a real station. There are lots of things going on behind the characters talking at the bar that's
Yeah.
really happening, you know?
And I think, unlike the Enterprise, there's a real feeling for that shift in mood when you move between ops and
Yes.
quarters
Yeah.
and the bar. They've all got their own different soundscapes, whereas on the Enterprise, you've got that gentle hum of the engines. I think they have
Yes.
that in Star Trek.
There's
But
always usually
otherwise, yeah.
some background kind of whir to let you know you're somewhere mechanical.
Yeah. But yes, the bar doesn't feel that different from anywhere else on the ship, whereas Quarks really does.
I'm glad you spotted that. I like it. I think you're absolutely right. You've identified it distinguishes it from other places on the station, makes it feel like we are now somewhere different. This is an ops. This is a bar, a real live living bar where anything could happen, and I love that. And I love the first O'Brien and Quark encounter. To Synthale barkeep, and Quark's like, "Don't call me barkeep. I'm many things. I am your host. I am this. I am that. I am not."
I'm the proprietor of this establishment.
I love it. It gives Quark such a brilliant opportunity. It's a little bit of character building for Quark. We suddenly realise, he tends bar, but he has ideas above that. He is not
He's
just.
proud. He's proud. He built this business, and he's very proud of it.
Absolutely right.
And I think O'Brien responds to that by saying, "And he will exploit any vice that you might have," which gives Tosk the opportunity to say very sincerely. He apologizes to Quark, saying, "I am sorry. I have no vices for you to exploit," which is a hell of a humble brag. And Quark replies, "A challenge," and offers him an exciting adventure in the Holosuite. To which Tosk replies, "I have no use for fantasy adventure. I live the greatest adventure one could ever desire," which is the first thing we've seen about what Tosk is actually doing. What's he there for? And O'Brien tries to press him on it, and he just says, "I cannot discuss it."
I love how naturally that whole thing flowed. It was comic with O'Brien and Quark, and then Quark and Tosk is like, "Oh, well, this is also a bit comic. Quark is indeed an exploiter," and another implication that holosuites are basically for fraternizing, and then it's a little bit of plot development. It's like, oh, Tosk's on some kind of adventure that he will not go into.
He's clearly he's proud of that, and he's intense with it.
But at the same time, he won't talk about it. And you're like, oh, intriguing what's going on here.
It's nice, and it's all so in character. It is in character for Quark to lean forward and get excited and try to find something that he can tempt this character with. It's very on brand for Tosk, as much as we know of him, to give that much away and then nothing else.
Yeah,
it's
absolutely right.
It's very nicely done.
I love it. I love that Quarks can be a kind of crucible for these kind of things. It's a great place where the plot will advance over the most innocuous of conversation, which I liked. And actually, I'm gonna throw your earlier conclusion around a bit, because you said that Ops and Quarks are very different places. Ops is obviously where the serious conversations happen, and that is the next scene. I believe O'Brien goes back to Ops to talk about more what he's kind of learned. But I've made a note that the meetings in Ops with the senior staff feel, again, very different to the meetings Picard held in the conference room of the Enterprise, because everyone's just kind of stood around, like Dax is leaning on her workstation, and a few of the crew are around the table, and they're kind of throwing things around. It feels a lot more natural and organic, and I wondered if you...
It feels like a more natural style of management, I think. People are sitting or standing where they feel most comfortable. They each join in as they want to. There's no, "Number one, what do you think? And you, ship's count, what is your take?" There isn't any of that. It's just people throwing out their opinions and their ideas and thinking out of the box and blue sky. They never use those terms, but that's effectively what they're doing. They're using each person, their expertise as best they can. It does feel very different from the Enterprise and from Jean-Luc Picard's way of managing a team.
I think not in a bad way, just very different. We realise this is a bit more of a rough and ready improvisational crew. Bashir pops up at one point and says, "Well, people might tell their doctor something they wouldn't tell anyone else." And
he's interrupted by O'Brien, who doesn't let him finish his sentence and just says, "You know what I really like about Tosk? He seems very naive. Can't get that on there." It's like, poor Bashir. I love that they gave him that line. They gave him a thing to say in this episode, which immediately gets shot down.
Yeah, I still feel like they're like, I wonder if Bashir's the butt monkey of the crew, They're the punching bag of the crew. He
Oh, I
won't
feel
be for
like he's
long.
the enthusiastic young person who doesn't have the authority to step up and do much yet. When he's needed, he's there, but
Yeah, and he's
yeah, he can't throw
clearly.
his weight around yet.
Oh God, no, absolutely not at all. He's clearly a skilled doctor, but in everything else, the guy's an absolute difficult person to work with. But yes, he still chips into the conversation, which, as you say, is wonderful. He has a chance to contribute, as does Kira, as does Dax. You know, it is a wonderful scene. Yeah, Izzy wants to say some stuff, but the spoilers. A reminder to everyone in chat and on the stream. Kat is watching DS9 for the first time. We are trying so hard to preserve their innocence and get their untainted perspective on all of this. So please, please do.
I ain't got a clue what happens to these people. I'm excited.
Yeah. I love it. I love it. So yes, they have the meeting. And yeah, O'Brien is coming around more and more to Tosk. You know, he's clearly very invested in the guy, and he's like, you know, almost
Yeah.
defensive. I felt because Dax is like, the guy's lied to you, and I like that Dax is the voice of reason there, and he's like, well, you know, and O'Brien tries to hedge it, and
Yeah, I think he's going on his gut feeling in this
that's
scene.
what it
He's
is.
saying,
I
"Yeah,
absolutely
I like
agree.
the guy. I don't feel that he's dangerous to us." And it turns out to have very good instincts, does O'Brien.
He does, but it's thrown into sharp relief in the next episode when Tosk is discovered in a corridor trying to
Next scene,
interface with the
yes.
security system. And I was going to make a note of how many times Odo has been something in the background and then turned into Odo. And I think this is like the third
Yes.
and fourth instance, but he is a picture,
Yeah, he's a
which we have
painting
never
on the
seen
wall.
on the
It's
wall.
lovely, and it just melts away onto the floor, and then Odo stands like T2. It's terrifying.
Yeah, it is, isn't it? Oh, God, it is. Really unnerving scene, but I think that's again reminds us that Odo is this very incomprehensible alien, and you know he could be anything, anywhere, anytime, which makes him a very good security officer. But you
But
know,
yeah, dangerous man to be on the wrong side of.
precisely,
Yes,
precisely.
I think by this scene, Cisco has said that what's going to happen is they're going to wish Tosk well and send him on his way, but
That's
then
right.
Odo
Sorry, we
finds him.
skipped that.
Oh
Yeah.
no, you're right. It's one line in the episode, and then yeah, Tosk finds him trying to do something at a security junction. He doesn't know what yet.
Mm-hmm.
But yes, Tosk becomes invisible again, and Odo just tells the computer to lock down the corridor and call security over. So Tosk kind of bounces around between the two security fields for a bit and then becomes visible again.
Oh,
Two
it's
security guys come up to find him.
yeah, it is. It's a strange little scene that where they basically box him in, and I like that Odo actually though is very non-confrontational in this scene, in almost in a way that's contrasting with his previous behavior in other episodes where he's been very the law, justice. I'm going to start throwing people around. He's very. I think he also gets the measure of Tosk, and he's like, Tosk is doing something I don't understand that looks suspicious, but he still doesn't. He doesn't give Odo a vibe of being hostile. So he's like, you know,
It's a good point. I don't think this episode ever draws out the fact that, like Odo, Tosk is the only member of his race aboard the station, that there isn't anyone else there who properly understands him.
no,
There isn't any dialogue that explicitly says that, but I think you can understand Odo's actions from that point of view. He's giving him the benefit of the doubt. He will stop him from interfering with the security measures, but he isn't going to, he's not aggressive towards him. He doesn't assume anything about what he's trying to do, though he does then insist, right, I'm going to put you in a holding cell because you've tried to access the security, which is fair enough.
Exactly. I think we can all agree that interfering with station security systems it is a
It's a bit dodge.
threatening. Yeah, it is a bit dodge. Although Izzy does note in the chat that Toss gives off some kind of vibe of a victim almost, that naivete. It is that contrast between that naivete he has about everything and then that weird singular purpose of I must get to the guns. It's very strange.
He hasn't been aggressive to anyone that he's met. He hasn't, even in conversation, he hasn't insisted, show me where this is.
No,
he's just listened and learned and then quietly gone on his own to try and figure out where the weapons locker is.
You're absolutely right. But Odo does put him in a holding cell, and I love that little camera angle at the beginning of the next scene where we are behind Cisco and Tosk is pacing back and forth to either side of Cisco's head. I thought he looked really quite nice the way he's locked in there and
Yeah.
Sisko is observing. It's very unusual.
You're right, they've given a lot of thought to camera angles in this episode. They've really directed it well.
No.
Yeah, I like it a lot. It's always interesting to watch, is this one. And just before he's put in the holding cell, Odo asks him what he was doing at the security junction. Tosk just replies that he must prepare, but he cannot discuss for what. He is Tosk. Odo says that while Tosk is put in a holding cell, he's going to have O'Brien investigate what Tosk was up to. He's going to go to the computer terminal and work that out. And Tosk perks up at the mention of O'Brien and repeats, "Oh, Brian," which is the way he pronounces it, just "Oh, Brian," with a slight pause between them. So that was a really sweet moment, just him being, he clearly trusts O'Brien.
That's exactly what it is, and I did love that as well. Yeah, and again, it's reinforcing that connection these two characters have, and now it's twisting it a bit because now they are connected, but Tosk is set against the crew of the station, and it's clearly going to pull O'Brien in two directions, which very much happens in the next scene where Sisko's, as we discussed earlier, wanting answers and. When Tosk says, "Well, I am Tosk," Sisko, slams down his hand and is like, "That's not enough. I need to know what that means." And he doesn't.
Yeah, I think Odo asks if he's wanted in his own quadrant. Have you committed any crimes? He's never. I am Tosk. And that moment's this like, okay, well, what does that mean? You need to give us more.
Yeah. And you can. I really felt that Sisko was very conflicted in that moment because he's like, I do want to help you. I think everyone's getting this vibe that Tosk now is quite exploited or a victim of something somehow. But at the same time, Sisko's number one priority is the safety of his station and his people. And Tosk seems to be in contrast with that. So it must be a very divisive moment, I think, for Sisko. And therefore Sisko's
definitely.
like, you know what? I don't believe... I got the feeling that Sisko felt Tosk didn't belong in that cell, but... he was making the hard decision that you're going to have to stay in that cell until this thing's figured out. And then O'Brien looks over his shoulder and Odo gets like an unspoken message and also leaves so O'Brien and Tosk can talk one-on-one, which I quite liked.
Yeah, that was very neat. Just a nice little bit of non-verbal communication between the crew.
Yeah, exactly. I liked it. And obviously O'Brien says, cut the craziness. I like you, you like me. Talk to me. Tell me what the hell is going on. And there is that great phrase, which is, "Please let me die with honor," which is very compelling because we don't know what on earth it means.
Yeah, it's very dark as well. Because he is at risk of death. He wants to be allowed to die with honor, but he can't tell anyone what that means yet.
What does that mean?
Still very similar to Babel, just that frustration of someone is clearly communicating something that's very meaningful to him. I am Tosk.
Yep.
And no one understands what he means. And everyone wants so much information from him that he cannot give at this point.
You're absolutely right. I love that. I love that. Once again, it's the challenge at the heart of the episode that I think it does very well. But it's tricky. In an episode where we've talked about how the universal translator works so very well, this is where it doesn't. It gives you the words, but perhaps not the meaning.
Yes, absolutely. There isn't a direct translation for Tosk, so...
There is not. No, that's a very good point. That's a very good point. But the episode obliges because we are now moving into the final third, when another ship, I believe this is the next scene, another ship comes through the wormhole. Very similar to Tosk's, but bigger, more powerful, and not.
And I think the first sign of it arriving is that shortly after they arrive, they scan the ship, and we're shown ops, and I think Kira and Odo look a bit. What's this? What's going on? And Sisko said, "No, let them have a good look at us,"
I love that.
which is a very nice way of putting it. Just no, we've got nothing to hide. Just let them check us out. Again, like a frightened cat. Just let it see what you are, but you're not going to do anything wrong.
That's such a good comparison. Absolutely, absolutely. But these aren't frightened cats this time. No, they absolutely ramp up the danger. Sisko orders the shields raised, and at that point, the newcomers bombard the station. It's almost an attack. It is an attack because they managed to bring down the shields by reversing the polarity, which is a wonderful sci-fi
From
phrase that
Doctor Who up in here.
came straight out of Doctor Who in the 70s because John Pertwee used to reverse the polarity of everything.
Mostly the neutron flow, but yeah.
That was the one. Thank you. Good Lord, it's been a while. Yes, I was thinking he did something to something, and it was indeed reversing the polarity of the neutron flow. But in this case, our
Yes,
visitors.
we get a lovely shot of their ship surrounding DS9 with this purple radiation,
It's
which is a
wonderful.
kind that O'Brien has never seen before.
No.
A hint that they're actually doing something that's alien at last.
Yes, this is it. So now the tension's really up. We're being bombarded with a weird alien light show. And the shields come down. And we all know that in Star Trek, when the shields come down, anything can happen, which includes people beaming, transporting.
Transporters can work again when you got your shields down.
Exactly. And this is when the newcomers visit the station. And me and Kat wanted to pull this up, so for the benefit of the stream, there it is. I'm now sharing with the stream the newcomers beaming onto the station with this wonderful, unforeseen kind of transporter effect, which has these kind of beams of light and rainbow effect and a strange noise, and they beam onto fully armored. They beam onto the promenade.
Yeah, and I've put in my notes they're dressed like Daft Punk.
They look like Space Daft Punk. Space Daft Punk are here. Around the station, around the station, around the station, around the station, around the station. Repeat ad infinitum.
But yes, you mentioned they come straight onto the promenade, which is easily the most populous place on the damn station.
Absolutely.
And they're met there by Cisco, Odo, Kira, and O'Brien, and a phaser battle ensues. And the DS9 crew set their phasers up to 6 because they hit them a few times. It doesn't do anything.
Absolutely. So this is a wonderful, almost, it harks back to the roots of DS9, which is Frontier Town. This for me feels very Western. This is a shootout on the main street at noon.
Nigel comments that he thought they had a hint of Blake 7 to their look.
Oh, wow.
I haven't seen much Blake 7, so I cannot comment.
I've not seen much of it either, but I understand it is obviously a very definitive British sci-fi show. And yeah, I understand it was very militaristic, a lot of space ray guns and space helmets on. So
a bad guy named after a cosmetics company.
Who was that?
Avon. Did he precede the door-to-door sale of soap, or did they just think, no one's heard of that, it's fine?
I could not. I'll throw that out to chat. If chat can remember which came first, the door-to-door.
In no way related to Trek.
You know what? That's fine. This is a very relaxed podcast. I don't mind if we go off. We've already talked about Red Dwarf.
And Doctor Who.
And Doctor Who. Let's bring in Blake 7. Let's bring them all in. But whilst chat is puzzling that out, yes, very, very Western, very Frontier Town. Shootout on Main Street. Guns going off left and right.
And now that you say it, Odo makes a good sheriff. Odo during this fight says that maybe these people are after Tosk. Kira says perhaps they have a right to him. And Odo replies, nobody's abducting a prisoner out of my brig as long as I'm alive. Which I felt was, again, a little at odds with how Odo has sometimes been.
Yeah.
He often takes the view that whatever law is predominant to the people he is working for or the area he is in, he'll follow that law because he follows the law to the letter. In this instance, he's almost protective of Tosk. He is my prisoner, he's under my jurisdiction, and they are not going to take him away, even though he knows full well they're aliens. They might have the perfect right to within their own moral code. But yeah, so that was a nice moment of no, not in my town.
You're absolutely right, and that is exactly, I think, what they were going for. This is the Frontier Town. Cisco is mayor, but Odo is sheriff. And if you want my prisoner, you get him properly or you don't get him at all. And kudos as well that we learn Odo, despite being absolutely backhanded in a wonderful Star Trek, angle behind, you see the guy take a hit to the face and down he goes on his back. And, Cisco drags him away and Kira tries to give him a gun and it's like, right, we're shooting out. And he's like, I don't use them. And he's like, oh, wow.
It's really nice because I was watching Kira do it as well because she's already managing her own phaser. She carefully reaches down to her belt, takes out a second one, tries to hand it to Odo, and he says, thanks, I never use them. Which is, very principled and very unusual.
Nigel has done some research and can tell us that Blake 7 was from 78. and Avon Door to Door was in the mid-80s. So, yeah.
Oh, so the cosmetic company's named after the Blake 7 villain.
Apparently so.
Right. Oh, my goodness.
Well,
Ding dong, Avon calling. Ah!
Futuristic ray guns in your face. Unbelievable. But yes, yeah, a wonderful snapshot moment. But Odo won't carry a gun. Kira quite deft with 2. I love it. It's over in a blink, but you suddenly realise, wow, Kira can really carry herself. We've already seen her duffing people up and, popping people with guns. But yeah, we are established once again. Kira's got like maybe 2 minutes tops in this episode. We learn about her more here. And then there's that wonderful moment when the lead alien just blows the security station doors open.
Really it just takes. It looks a bit like a crossbow, but it fires a beam of light, and the door just explodes. It's a very rare moment.
Blows the bloody doors off in absolutely classic British moment. Absolutely astounding.
It's really nice. And when you turn back to the other carriages on the other side of the room, the smoke drifting across it, Kira and Odo both coughing from the explosion.
Yep.
Again, it feels like it's physically happening in the space. There's nothing incongruous about it.
Yeah.
And the alien just walks through the destroyed door into the area where the holding cells are.
That's it. And we get that. We finally get a bit of resolution. This alien takes his hat off and he looks a bit like Tosk, but not. He's got like a weird kind of comb over mullet thing going on.
Yeah, Tosk is very, very reptilian looking. Yes. He's got big vertical slit eyes, contact lenses. He's got a full head mask with very detailed scales all over it. It's a really nice design. And this guy has a similar face, but a big mop of hair. It's really weird. It just looks very uncanny.
It is, and I think that's intentional because, we're going to find out later that they are very different. They come from the same basic race, but they are very different creatures. And, we find out a bit about this. Obviously, what we find is a hunter comes into the cell, uses his special seeing eye to kind of reveal Tosk.
He casts this little red circle of light across the cell, and as it moves around, eventually one of Tosk's hands comes into view, then his face, and then he uninvisibles himself, and he's standing on the bed in a defensive pose.
And this is it, and we find out that there is a reason, and it is that the hunters are hunting Tosk. They are hunting him, and it's a contest, it's a game, it's a tournament, something bizarre like that. And this hunter is utterly disgusted in Tosk's many breakings of the rule. He's come to the wrong part of space. He's got help from aliens, and he is caught in a cell.
Most critically, he's been captured already. He's in a holding cell. The one thing that's not meant to happen. He's alive, and he's easy to catch.
Oh, disgusting.
Absolute disgrace.
I love in this Sisko's very palpable anger. You can feel it because we're used now to Sisko's very measured and modulated tone. And in this scene, he is, you disrupt life on this station. You blow up my security office. You better have a damn good reason. And I love it. You can already feel that Sisko is a very confident and proud man, and he is utterly committed to the station and the people under his command. Very different from episode 1 Sisko, who was not sure if he wanted to stay at all, I felt.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And I think the script is actually quite subtle in some ways. There's one line that Sisko says, and he says it incredulously, and he has to in order for it to land properly. He says, "You're saying that this whole thing was a hunt, and Tosk is the prey?" And the hunter's response is, "You are right. The Tosk is unworthy of such a noble description." So that line, this whole thing was a hunt and Tosk was the prey, it's very mundane. It's just asking what happened. But that emphasis on prey, in their culture, that's important. Being a Tosk, being the prey, is a role of honor. And this man has dishonored it by being captured, by being caged and helpless. And the hunter turns back to Tosk and says, "For this dishonor, you will endure the greatest humiliation Tosk can know, to be captured and brought home alive. You will live out your existence on public display. Children will make fun of you, toss you scraps of food, which is more than you deserve." And he twice has this little of disgust, and he kind of goes,
He's a wonderful ham. He chews the scenery as a villain, which he is, really quite well. You immediately get the measure of this guy and realise that you hate this guy. This guy's a twerp. What?
But yes, Cisco refuses. He says, I am not inclined to take orders from you after he has disrupted life on the station for the pleasure of your hunt.
I love that whole confrontation. It's so meaty.
It really is. They're both so deeply serious and intent on, this is where I stand, this is where you stand. The two do not meet.
I loved it. I absolutely loved it. And it continues. Obviously, there was a touching moment where O'Brien realizes what's happened, and just they have that unspoken look at Tosk, who is utterly.
Yeah, there's just a really long shot of O'Brien just looking at him with so much pity on his face.
You're created prey for another species to hunt. That's horrendous.
And he doesn't say a word, and Tosk just looks at him for a moment and then turns away.
Oh,
yeah, it's just so sad.
It is an awful moment, and then it's immediately contrasted with Cisco and the alien hunter in Cisco's office, and I love that Cisco immediately slams some 20th century pastimes, blood sports, and he spits it with all the contempt it deserves. And he's like,
yeah, the alien asks, surely your people have something similar in your culture. And he said, well, yes, hundreds of years ago, my people engaged in blood sports, killing lower species for pleasure. He says a few cultures still do, but even they wouldn't consider hunting a sentient being, which I think is a nice bit of world building. There is a bit of, I get the feeling that the showrunners are taking a very, very dim view of hunting in general. They live in a pretty much, I suppose, a society we could describe as vegan. Everything comes from the replicator. There's no need to kill anything at all. And when you have the holodecks, why would you hunt a real being for sport? There's just no need of it.
Exactly. I like it, it feels very in keeping with Star Trek's philosophy, which is, all of that stuff sucks. Why would you do any of it? We have limitless power, limitless resources. Why would you need to do any of that?
That is a good point, though. Cisco is coming from a position of extreme privilege in a culture that has all of these things at his disposal. He doesn't know what their culture is like. He's got no idea of what has formed it over the years into what it is. So, yeah, there is zero empathy here. He draws a very, very hard moral line, and he just refuses to see over it.
He does. But at the same time, then by the end of the conversation, he remembers he's a Starfleet officer. And he says the line, I cannot judge what is right and wrong in your society, which is something that, every single Star Trek show always comes across at some point or another, where a Starfleet captain, it's always a captain, is put in a situation where they are observing something cultural in another alien society that we, as the enlightened, privileged citizens of the United Federation of Planets, would object to. But we have committed to a code, the Prime Directive, that we will not interfere with another alien culture's kind of decisions and choices, and this is exactly it.
And that just follows the alien saying, we honor Tosk. They are the symbol of all that is noble and courageous. They train and condition themselves all their lives for this event. They're proud of their role in our culture. So it's that dilemma of, to Cisco and presumably to the rest of the Federation, this would be morally abhorrent to have a hunter caste and a hunted caste.
Exactly.
We don't believe in, the Federation do not believe in dividing society along those lines anymore, of giving someone a predestined fate from birth. But in their culture, it's presumably all that they know, and both parties believe in it. The Tosk very clearly believes in his being.
They both do. So it's not like, Tosk's a victim, because he is engaging, by all standards, without force. He is not compelled to take part.
He's living the adventure of a lifetime, as he said in Quark's bar. It's the best thing he could possibly be doing with his existence.
It's Izzy who says, that they're concerned that this is conditioning to accept these horrific situations, and being gaslit into thinking that this honor is, something to strive for. And I think that's more than I think the writers of a 90s sci-fi show could possibly hope to aspire. But there's possibly some germ to an idea in that.
I think that they definitely understand that different cultures have different beliefs based in, as I said earlier, everything that's gone before them, which Cisco doesn't have any insight into.
You're absolutely right. And this also then kind of throws into sharp relief something that I always want to bring up, which is Federation Asylum, which is something that people can apply for. And it always, to me, casts the Federation in this light of being a bit of a saviour. A bit of a saviour culture. Don't worry, we will protect you from the primitive beliefs of another culture. And it always jars a bit on me. And that feels like a bit of a simplistic 90s view.
It does feel quite colonialist in that sense, that the Federation meets and invites in, and they genuinely do invite in. I've just finished watching a TNG episode where they meet a culture that is not ready yet to join the Federation. They're quite xenophobic. The majority of them would believe that they were colonizing them, which in a way they are. But the leader of that culture just says, we're not ready. We don't want you to come back in our lifetimes, which Picard agrees to. But yeah, the Federation seeks to meet other cultures, sometimes pre-warp, sometimes they try and get them pre-warp because then they don't meet them in battle in space.
Yeah, this is a very good point, yeah.
And everyone who's outside the Federation is either an underdeveloped planet or they're the enemies of the Federation. It does feel, I don't think it's necessarily intentional, but I think it possibly, as you've kind of suggested, is a blind spot of the writers. It feels as if the Federation is eventually going to cover everything that it touches. And yeah, we could probably talk for hours about whether or not that's a good thing, but from this position in the early 21st century, with all of the discourse around colonialism, it ain't a good look.
No, you put your finger on, I think, what is one of the most key themes of Star Trek, and thankfully, I am pleased to report, without any spoilers, this topic will be discussed and interrogated quite intelligently in DS9, because a backdrop theme is Bajor is post-warp. They can warp travel, but they're not Federation citizens. They are considering Federation membership. They've previously emerged from within the grasp of the Cardassian Union and other post-warp advanced civilizations. They are one of those outside the Federation societies. So how they interact with the Federation is very much a defining theme of the entire show. You know, we're talking the next 6 years we're going to be covering this topic. So, yeah, exactly. It is going to be really interesting to approach something that I think TNG did with broad strokes, definitely. This kind of clumsy, well, you know, we're the humans, we're the Federation, we're great. Yeah, we'll save you from your problems, all of this. All you have to do is join in and follow our rules.
And Izzy points out that actually pre-warp is against the Prime Directive.
Should not, under any circumstances, contact pre-warp civilization.
No, you are right. I got that wrong. I think they try and get them at the point at which warp is developed.
This is it.
Basically, I think they try and contact them before there is a point at which they can possibly come out into space, encounter them, and think the Federation might be hostile. Exactly. So they cannot give them any technology that they do not yet possess in terms of space travel.
This is absolutely the ideal discussion point, and yeah, this is their goal, because as TNG, the movies kind of explored the Vulcans did not contact Earth until we demonstrated we had warp flight.
I haven't watched any of the movies yet. I need to get onto them.
Crumbs, terrible spoiler, terrible spoiler.
No, it's all right. I think it's watching DS9 now. That's in the past. It's already happened.
Yeah, I suppose. So actually, wait, no. Technically, in the show's timeline, it hasn't happened yet. That whole First Contact film has not yet happened. So we will put that to one side. But we know that the Vulcans are a founding member of the Federation, and therefore their ethics, as a very old race of the galaxy, do form part of the Federation's kind of diplomatic and moral code, which is, There
was a moment very early in this episode when I think Tosk and O'Brien were discussing something, and O'Brien says, as the Vulcans say, we're here to serve. It's just a nice little throwaway line that kind of draws the wider Star Trek universe back into this little bottle episode that just happens aboard. They're all bottle episodes on Deep Space Nine, aren't they? But this episode that happens aboard the station, they nonetheless draw in reference to other cultures that don't appear in it.
Which is good world building. If you slot it in one line, that's good world building. As we all know, as fans of creative fiction, we know we don't want, like, you know, a mountain of exposition. We want a casual one line that goes, oh yeah, the Vulcans. Oh yeah, Mr. Spock. Yeah. Those guys have been around for ages. And that's it. It is building into this. We don't interfere with alien cultures that haven't discovered warp, and we don't interfere with alien cultures as a rule. We respect their autonomy. How well the Federation does that is up for debate, and we will get into that in other episodes. But I am
And
conscious.
it's not strictly relevant here because they're encountering a person who has or people who have come through the wormhole to them.
Yeah.
This isn't an instance of the Federation finding another planet and going, do you know what you need? Our rule of law.
Oh, yes, we have all that to come. We shall not steal ahead, though, and we must press on, as it has already been an hour and 15 minutes.
For a 45-minute episode. But yes, yes, conversing with the hunter.
Yes.
The hunter tells Sisko that in the future, passage through the anomaly, which is how they term the wormhole, will be considered out of bounds for the hunt. Will that satisfy you? Sisko just looks enraged still. He looks at him breathing heavily and he doesn't respond. But the hunter goes on to say, now you will arrange for the release of the Tosk. And he beams back to his own vessel.
Just get out.
Yeah. And Sisko goes back to his crew and he just says, I've agreed to release him. And O'Brien, yes, at that point, O'Brien argues for Tosk that he's an intelligent living being, and Kira asks about the asylum request, because a couple of episodes ago, Kira helped to get asylum for 2 Bajoran nationals who were travelling through. So it's a nice little tie back to what we already know about asylum from this series.
Yes, she did, didn't she? Yes. It is wonderful to give Kira that opportunity. It's not a Starfleet member of the crew, it's a Bajoran national who says, your vaunted Federation offers asylum to anyone who wants it. Wouldn't that be helpful? And Sisko's
so Sisko says that if he asks for it, we can only grant it if he requests it.
This is it, absolutely. And obviously O'Brien goes back to the holding cells, and he's actually panting when he gets in there. He's clearly run all the way from ops, down the lift, across promenade into the security office. He's like, I've got a way out. We can offer you asylum. We'll protect you. We will look after you. And obviously, we realise the cultural dissonance, which is Tosk like, I don't want that. I don't want you to protect me because that's not my life. My life is to run from and evade these people. I can't just stand here hiding behind you because that's not my life.
Yeah, I wrote down the little speech that he gives because it is quite a nice one. He says, to stay would be a greater dishonour. I am Tosk, the hunted. I live to outwit the hunters for another day, to survive until I die with honour. But that will not be my fate. But I will not deny my existence as Tosk. Thank you, O'Brien, but I cannot request asylum. Just that he knows that at this point his life's effort has been futile. He is dishonoured. He has been captured by someone else before being captured by the hunters. He isn't going to die with honour, but he's still very proud of what his role is, and he won't dishonour that by requesting asylum and living a peaceful life.
Which is Star Trek at its best. You give people a choice that seems obvious, brilliant, safety, and they exercise their own agency. And throw into contrast the whole Federation ideal, which is, we'll give you an ideal scenario. All you have to do is join us. And he's like, you know what? No, I'm going to take the third option, which is, fuck you all, I'll go home with these guys.
And again, if you imagine it as an alien species trying to colonize our planet, how many people would say, fuck you, we're not joining. I'd rather live free than die under the yoke of this new alien species that I don't know anything about. It's a very, and even without bringing aliens into it, it feels like a very human dilemma, that difficulty of how do we have different cultures with very different ideals living side by side without Prime Directiving them.
This is it. And I think it's something that Star Trek glosses over a lot, and DS9 tries to dig into a bit more. Because it is a really difficult question. And as early back as one of the Kirk movies, it was Undiscovered Country, and the Klingons described the Federation as a humans-only club. And it's like, that's not true, Look, we've got Mr. Spock. And then you suddenly realise, oh my God, I'm defending the token alien member of the crew. And almost always, Next Generation, we've got a half Beta Z counselor and a Klingon on the bridge, and everyone else is a human except for the android made by humans.
Yeah.
And, Star Trek is. Even DS9, we've got a Trill and a Bajoran on the main crew, but everyone else is a human except for Odo, I guess.
It does feel very human-centric. Yeah.
There we go. Great minds. Oh, yes. I've just noticed in the chat there, is he saying if we'll do a roundup at the end of each season? I'd be very interested, but I get the feeling this might run for like 2 or 3 hours because we could talk for ages about this show, and Cats is usually
We'll have to think
great.
about it, though. It'd be nice to do something to mark the end of each season. So I'll have to think about what that looks like
As we approach it,
when we finally reach the end of a season, if we're not both
Exactly.
old and wizened by then.
But this is episode 5, and
Older
it's
and more wizened.
nonsense, complete nonsense. But yeah, this is only episode 5, and we're already pushing. Yeah, the better part of a day. It would take you a day to watch the 5 episodes we've recorded so far. But that's because we are. I think it's because it's new and we're still exploring how the show is set up. And I hope that things will calm down a little as we get into the later seasons.
Well, they're gonna have to give us less good shit to talk about. It's the only thing they can do. There's just so much to discuss about each episode because it's so damn good.
I'm so glad you think so. And a lot of the discussion amongst fans, and there will be fans of you out there in chat, which is every Star Trek show stumbles in its first season. And there are people who will say, "Oh, you've got to power through seasons 1, maybe even seasons 2. DS9 doesn't get good until about season 3." And I'm like, I don't think that's true. I think DS9 is pretty good from season 1. But
I obviously don't know what else it has to offer in later seasons and what it does once it's established everything. Yeah.
We want to preserve. It will be interesting. We'll follow Izzy's suggestion, and by the end of season 3, maybe you'll be able to turn back and say, you know what, season 1 was pretty ropey in comparison. But I like that you still like it and aren't already regretting this decision to review every single episode with me.
I mean, I'm tied in now. I can't possibly drop out. It would be dishonourable to do so. If I find I hate it by next week, it's tough. I've just got to keep going now.
Oh wow, you are absolutely locked in.
But yes, in the next scene,
Yes,
O'Brien has just tried to persuade Tosk to claim asylum. He won't do it. The next scene, he goes to Quark's bar, because where else do you go when you got problems?
Where else do you go?
And Quark says, "So far, I'm not impressed with the tourist trade from the Gamma Quadrant. Not one of them has bought a single drink." And when O'Brien tells him to shut the heck up, Quark replies, "More trouble with the little woman." Which just, in Deep Space Nine, I think there has been one scene when the O'Briens were seen to be arguing. They were having a discussion on the promenade where Keiko was saying that she was bored. Exactly, it wasn't even an argument. She was saying, "I'm bored here. I'm a botanist. There isn't any work for me here." But that was construed by Odo and Quark as being an argument. And it just feels as if the station-wide gossip about how badly Miles and Keiko get along, which I think in TNG was fair enough. Every episode where the two of them featured, there was some kind of conflict between them. But at this point, it just feels a bit boomerish. It's just a bit, what do we know about Miles O'Brien? He's married. That's a problem for him, isn't it? Yeah.
Wives? Who?
Oh,
God.
It's just not borne out by anything that's happened. They clearly love each other. It's fine. But no, and O'Brien understandably gets irked by this. He grabs Quark's collar and tells him there's nothing wrong between his wife and him, which is true. And if there were, he sure as hell wouldn't want to tell some barkeep about it. Although I do note that he's just walked away from this difficulty trying to persuade a man to claim asylum. Did he go to his loving wife to discuss this problem, or did he go straight to a bar and get a drink?
Again,
he's kind of built his own problem there.
Yeah, he has, and this is something Kat and I talked about when we were setting up Deep Space Nine, which is analysing when Deep Space Nine was written by people who lived in the 90s and grew up in the 80s and were born in the 70s. I think it is very much of its time that you would absolutely, as a working man and everyman, go to the bar and talk about your problems.
That's a very good point. Yeah, it's a cultural thing that I don't jibe so much with, because you're
You wouldn't.
Because in my life, your partner is there to talk to about these difficulties. I head straight home and talk to my partner about what's happening. In this, he doesn't go home to Keiko. He goes to the bar and then complains when Quark asks if there's a problem with his wife. It's not entirely unwarranted.
But again, this is something that we will make a regular comment on, which is scenes that jar with us in the 21st century that you would not
modern
expect.
sensibilities. Yeah,
100%.
Quark responds to him by saying, "Your face gets very pink when it's aggravated, much more so than other humans."
Humans, I knew it.
Humans! It's the first time I've heard Quark say something so
And not
Ferengi.
the last either. Other Ferengi will turn up and go, human. I think it might have been Nog actually who said it.
In TNG, they said human.
They did, didn't they? Yes, human.
Yeah, that's their way of pronouncing. But Quark's usually so fluent and so relatively smooth in his talking. It was really unusual to hear from him. But yes, he presses O'Brien to say more about it, which O'Brien does. And O'Brien just monologues for a bit, kind of telling Quark, well, you know, it's a hunt. Tosk's being hunted, and now he's trapped here between the Federation and his own people. And I know if a Ferengi doesn't like the rules, they just change them. But,
Bing.
And he realizes at that moment,
Eureka.
What if I change the rules? Quark doesn't even need to say anything. He just runs off, and Quark looks very pleased with himself and goes straight to the next table where there's someone nearly comatose from drink and goes, so what's happening with you? It's really cute. Just Quark discovering his vocation as a counselor.
Isn't that incredible? Again, it happens in like a 3-minute scene, and yet it's character development. Quark clearly has aspirations beyond just being a bartender. He's like, no, this place, I'm proud of this place and the service it offers. You know,
how do people come across? Sorry.
No, go on.
I was going to say, and just functionally in terms of the script, how do people suddenly come across an idea? You sit down and then suddenly you go, oh yeah, and walk off. You can't do that in a TV show. You can't just show him sitting down and thinking for 5 minutes and then walking away. So instead he goes to someone who the very thought of whom prompts the idea in him that you cheat, that you change the rules. It's so neat. It works so well, and it gives Quark a bit more on-screen time in a very Miles-heavy episode. So yeah.
It does. I think the writers are already realizing that they have an absolute gem in the hands of Quark. And
I mean, Armin Shimmerman, he's amazing. He's a fantastic comedy actor.
I'm just going to segue very briefly and say Armin Shimmerman voices a character, a second supporting character in Starfield, the new RPG from Bethesda, which is currently one of the best-selling games of all time. And it is wonderful to hear his voice in a wonderful computer game. And he does play a corporate CEO, so he's a little bit typecast, but he is wonderful. And I just wanted to kind of highlight that actually it's wonderful to hear Armin Shimmerman's wonderful voice and amazing ability to channel so much through his voice, because obviously, you know, he was great in Buffy as the principal, and in DS9 he's fantastic, but he has to work with a very inflexible mask. So here is a man who is very good, an actor who's very good at portraying a character just through his voice. So wonderful.
I'm glad that he's still doing it these 30 years later.
It's incredible. The man's unstoppable. You know, he's an engine, and I'm glad to hear it because he is a wonderful performer. So I'm very pleased.
He really is. I think more than any other Ferengi, Quark immediately has so much presence on screen. No, he's brilliant.
He is absolutely superb, and it is a great scene. I was going to say something else, but we are running really over, so I'm going to push us
okay
along.
let's trot ahead then. The hunter is affixing a collar to Tosk with a lead attached to it. Odo says that really isn't necessary, and the hunter replies, our ritual requires it when a Tosk is captured alive. And Odo is standing there to escort them to the transporter station. O'Brien, having just realized that he can break the rules, turns up and says to Odo that he will escort Tosk, that this is a Starfleet matter, not a matter for security, as orders from Sisko. Odo says, well, I shall go and ask Sisko about that, and he marches off to talk to Sisko. The hunter tells O'Brien that his own ship will transport them, and O'Brien replies, that won't be necessary. Good relations with other cultures is our highest priority. Commander Sisko wants to make sure that you understand that we're sorry we interfered with your hunt. The least we can do is give you an official escort off the station. It's a token of goodwill and respect in our society. He really leans on respect to make sure that the alien isn't going to contravene what he has just said. But it's a wonderful speech, and it's just pulled out of his ass like 2 minutes after he's decided he's going to do it. It's brilliant.
And it's so effective as well, and it's wonderful.
Yeah, he makes Odo leave. He gets the alien on side very quickly, and by spouting all of that speech, which an officer would normally have given, and he, as a member of staff, wouldn't have. It's brilliant. He's been watching these people a long time. He knows how to talk their talk.
He really has. It is a brilliant scene, and it's a credit to the chief being such a thinker on his feet, which he is. He's very improvisational, is the chief, and we'll find that out as the show develops. But it is a great scene, and I think a very meaningful moment in any Star Trek show is when a character takes off their comm badge and flicks it on the desk. And you
I haven't seen it happen often yet. I think this might be the first time I've seen it.
It might have happened in TNG, but it's definitely the first time in DS9, and it's a big deal.
Just as he lets the Hunter and Tosk leave the room first, and then he just quietly takes off, throws it down on a surface, and walks out.
Yeah, it's wonderful, and it tells you stuff is about to get real and probably illegal.
Because the implication of not having his comm badge is that he can't be traced, and no one on the ship can contact him. It's like leaving your mobile phone somewhere. The person does not want to be found.
Inconceivable, right? Inconceivable, and this is it, And so this is it. This is O'Brien. He's still buttering this Hunter up. Wonderful. What we now know is that Starfleet bullshit, which is respect for all cultures, honor, diversity, diplomacy. Walks him to the security scanner, which we noticed earlier, and makes the Hunter walk through it first. Zap!
Yes. Immediately, he falls back from this security, from this force field, and O'Brien follows it up with a punch to the face.
And what does O'Brien say? Glass jaw, that's why you wear helmet. I love it. It's such an unnecessary put down, but he's like...
He really doesn't like him, and he got his punch in. It's a great moment. And just before that happens, Odo has stormed into Sisko's office, telling him that Starfleet has no business taking charge of a prisoner transport. Sisko says, whoa, calm down. Calm down. What are you talking about? And they work out together what it is that O'Brien's done. And Sisko calls back to Odo. Oh, no, sorry. First, he tries to call O'Brien, who doesn't have his comm badge with him.
That's right.
Odo then turns to go and apprehend them both.
Yes.
And Sisko says, no need to rush. He tells him to go to leisure. And there's a lovely prolonged moment when Odo makes eye contact with him. And within one glance, he looks confused and annoyed, then understands, and then nods in acceptance and walks away very, very slowly. It's lovely. Again, the script allows for the cast to use so much non-verbal communication. So there must have been so many directions in that script beside all of the dialogue.
Yes. It is a wonderful scene. I absolutely love that Odo, Rene Auberjonis, gets that chance to really kind of fight his every instinct to stop a crime and just walk very slowly. And I think at one point he does look over his shoulder and goes, am I doing it right?
You sure? But compared with previous episodes where he's had outright arguments with Sisko about what they're going to do in this situation because it's so unusual for Odo, he's now starting to accept that, what the commander says goes, and we will sometimes blur those lines because the difference between law and morality is very relevant.
It's so interesting you should observe that, because I remember watching that thinking, Sisko's basically asked Odo to not follow the law. Odo has seen that a crime is happening and that, somebody's been assaulted. There's a fight on the promenade. And Sisko said, let's, a little bit of bureaucratic stoppage here. And Odo goes along with it. Now, this is the man that we've already been shown is quite inflexible in his approach. Justice is justice, law is law. So it's also a nice bit of interesting character development for Odo, which is, okay, I'm now willing to play around a little bit with the rules that I used to be so beholden to. So it's a nice little moment for Odo, I feel.
It is, and it adds to that what Izzy said last week about how on Deep Space Nine there's no black and white, everything is greys. I think Odo is starting to get a hint of that.
Exactly, and I think that is an example of how DS9 is all about character development. Odo is now changing a bit, and we're only 5 episodes in, which is wonderful to see. Let's cut back to the action now, and obviously the Hunter who got zapped and then punched in the face has now said the hunt is on, and the Hunter return to the station. They jump back in, and we see Tosk in action on one of the overwalks of the promenade. he kind of
Oh.
rears up and leaps like about 8 or 9
He
foot
leaps.
and
I think he leaps over O'Brien to attack
does,
the guy who's
and
coming
just
for him,
lands on a guy and absolutely wipes him out.
then pushes him over the balcony and down to the
does.
floor below. It's brilliant because we had no idea he could do that, and suddenly
Exactly.
he's here being prey again properly. He's in his element and he's fighting.
It's wonderful. And again, this is something DS9 does a lot is, oh wow, we've got a set that's on a couple of levels,
Yeah.
which is new to Star Trek. Obviously, everything's always on the bridge or 10 forward or the holodeck.
And it's very thought out. It's congruent. After knocking out the hunter, they run up some stairs. They get to that level. There's no sense of this is mysterious. We don't know how. It's not a haunted house feeling of we don't know where they've come from and gone to. They're going to run upstairs, so they'll be on a level, so he can fall down. It's all thought through and really nicely directed to keep that sense of what's happening through a lot of action. It's lovely.
I love that. And it just a little bit as well, it chips into your thought that, the promenade is a big place on a couple of levels. There is the bottom, where the bottom of Quarks is. There is the balcony, where the top of Quarks is. And you suddenly realise this is a whole, multi-level place. This is a real place. It makes it believable. I loved it. And also, it's a nice bit of drama. It's a nice bit of action. A guy falls off a balcony. Wonderful.
Oh, heck yeah. Give the stunt people something to do.
There you go. This is it. Absolutely. So our friends are fleeing now, O'Brien and Tosk, and they have a lovely moment when they jump into one of the access corridors.
Yes, I've written down in my notes. They go into an access corridor.
Yes.
We know that it's not a Jeffries tube because this isn't a Federation-built ship.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm understanding these differences now. There's a moment when they enter, I think just before they enter the tube, Tosk says, "Now you are Tosk as well, O'Brien."
Exactly
when O'Brien removes his collar from him, it's just really beautiful because we know that Tosk holds his role in high esteem, and he's now saying, "You, an alien, are the same as me.
We are fleeing the hunt together."
Yes,
we are Tosk.
Beautiful,
isn't that wonderful? Little bit of cultural and character development. It's fantastic.
And then a moment later, in one of the tubes, O'Brien comments, "The Cardis made these conduits from 2-meter thick duranium composite. I've never seen a scanning device that could penetrate it.
Pow.
A scanning device penetrates it." But I just love the throwing in of the Cardis, because we know who the Cardassians are by now.
Yes.
And we know that O'Brien is familiar with their tech. He knows about the construction of the station that they're on. It feels congruent with the world for him to say that.
It does. I did also, if we'd have had more time, I would have wanted to interrogate this more, which is, it's a slur. Yeah. Cardis is clearly not a complimentary term for the Cardassian people. It's a slur. Now, we've already talked about the fact that Miles is a veteran of the wars the Federation fought with the Cardassians prior to this entire show. So how did you feel about him using a very charged racial term?
It's unusual, isn't it? Because I don't think there are many instances of that happening in Star Trek. Even when people are terrified of the Klingons, the Romulans, they still refer to them by their full name. They don't come up with slang terms for them.
They don't. And
it's just a throwaway moment. There's nothing weighty about it. He's saying this to someone who doesn't know what the connotations of the word are as they crawl through a corridor to escape.
Cardis.
Yeah, it's
you
strange.
Said earlier about how Brian is this colloquial person, and as he points out in the chat, there are other slang terms, racial slurs that we will learn about the Cardassians. And they are delivered very naturally in a way that is very believable of a living society, but runs very counter to these Federation morals and ethics.
Yeah, it's something an officer might not do and certainly wouldn't do in company. So again, it marks out that class difference perhaps between the officers and what's expected of them, and O'Brien, who is at heart an engineer.
I think you put your finger on something I hadn't even spotted, but you're absolutely right. O'Brien is not a Starfleet officer. He is a working man. He's a rank and file member of Starfleet, just here to fix your replicator. He's not out there exploring the galaxy. He just has a job to do. So
thanks to Izzy for pointing out that difference between being an officer and being an enlisted crew member, because that does raise class in a way that Star Trek doesn't usually. It skirts around a lot, I think.
It does 100%. Whilst at the same time implying that it's very much still there. Starfleet officers are one class, and enlisted men. In an organisation, a quasi-military organisation, there's obviously going to be distinctions between those two levels. And Star Trek always feels like it kind of fumbles a bit with that. Starfleet's, oh, the Federation's a great equitable organization, but any military organization has a chain of command. There are people on top doing the telling and people underneath doing the doing.
Yeah, and I think in The Next Generation, they really did try to emphasize we're an exploratory vessel, not military. Even though it has full military capacity and does have to lead the charge on many, many occasions, they really want to deny the militaristic nature of it, which again goes with the nature of colonialism that is led by militarism. Yeah. But sorry, I'm aware that we're about an hour and 40 minutes.
You know what? It's fine. People are just going to have to suck it up that we have so much to say. I don't want to curtail anything. You're absolutely right.
We had to do this. You don't have to listen to it. You can switch off at any time. We're very grateful. Thank you. Please stay.
Please stay.
Please. We're sorry.
But it's interesting, is he's pointing out that the Federation is not a militaristic society. Only Starfleet is. But even Starfleet arguably isn't. It's meant to be a glorified Coast Guard exploratory fleet, and when push comes to shove, like the Borg or the Romulans or the Klingons, we've got ships with weapons on them. We can fight, but we're not meant to be. DS9 will take that idea and turn it completely on its head and throw the Federation into a situation where it cannot avoid militarism. But we will come to that. But right now, it is already shining a light on, at the end of the day, we carry weapons. We fly armed starships. We defend the Federation. Defense is such a loose term that I think can cover a multitude of sins. But
they've got a large weapon locker aboard this completely neutral ambassadorial station.
Right? Yeah. It's so... we will get into it. That is a conversation that will ongo with our discussion of Deep Space Nine. But yes, O'Brien...
Yes, and they come out of the tube, they knock down some more aliens, some of the hunters who appeared to fight them.
Yes.
Tosk picks up one of their weapons and knocks down more of them with it.
Yep.
And then aboard Tosk's ship, Tosk puts his weapon away and O'Brien asks, well, what now? And Tosk replies, the hunt goes on. Do you wish to come?
Yes.
Which again is a really moving moment. He's only just met this guy and already he wants to invite him into his life with him. It's really lovely. And O'Brien laughs and says, oh, no, I don't think so. One day as a Tosk is enough for me. And I've got a wife and kid that wouldn't fit too well with this lifestyle.
It's so true, and it's a wonderful, wonderful human... Sorry, it's a bit discriminatory, but it's a wonderful, believable, personable moment. I did just notice that there was a wonderful moment when they fall into the corridor that Tosk fires his weapon, hits the very disagreeable leader of the hunters and his two guards with one shot. Shot in a million, wipes them all out, and they're all left sprawled on the floor with smoke coming off them. Very dramatic, right?
Yeah, and they kind of walk over them to go along the corridor. And it's not made clear in that moment whether they're alive or dead. I think for the story to work, maybe they're just knocked out.
It's never explored. Let's leave it.
We don't see those guys again.
Yeah, I don't think we're going to see those guys again either. But yes, it is immediately tailed with a wonderful emotional moment where Tosk says, you've helped me, you are Tosk. Reinforce that moment, come with me, let's flee the Tosk hunters forever. But they do not, and therefore they have that wonderful parting where Tosk stands, as O'Brien's saying, well, I've cleared the way, you can leave now. And Tosk stands, grasps him by the arm and says, die with honour, O'Brien.
And there's a lovely long lingering moment on Colm Meaney's face where he's trying to make sense of this, and he looks understandably a little put out at first. This guy's trying to honour you by saying, die! Die with honour, O'Brien. And during the course of that moment on camera, he comes to terms with it, and he then looks resolved and says, die with honour, Tosk. He exchanges that greeting. He understands the importance of it, and it's beautiful. It's lovely that in such an action-heavy episode, they made so much space for those silent moments. It's a very strong script. They really trusted the actors to deliver this.
I'm really glad you thought so. I thought so as well. It was a great opportunity to do a bit of pure Star Trek, which is building bridges with other cultures you don't initially understand, and you suddenly realize that is a term of utmost respect from Tosk. He is paying O'Brien the highest accolade he can, which
Hmm.
is, I wish for you to live and die as I would live and die. And it's like, wow, incredible moment. And yes, we see a little shot of Tosk's little ship flying past the bigger hunter ship, and presumably back through the wormhole, back to the Gamma Quadrant, and back to their horrible, horrible existence. But ultimately, this is not a
But it's a
show.
wonderful adventure. He's enjoying it. It's fine.
Exactly.
We'll come to that at the end.
Exactly. This is not currently the moment to explore long-lasting implications. Um, but yes, Tusk escapes, and for me, the next scene is O'Brien in Cisco's office. I think you have
Yeah,
to
that's
say.
right.
So, what were your
Yeah.
impressions of this scene, which I felt very important?
Yeah, I'll just run through what happens in it. Cisco asks
Yes.
O'Brien what must have happened at that security checkpoint. And O'Brien says it must have overloaded. Must have, since I increased their output by about
Just gives
200%.
itself up.
He does. I think it's a nice moment of trust, though. He's not going to lie to his commanding officer. He's going to tell him what happened and assume that he is on side with it. Cisco replies, "So in effect, you assaulted him. Our first contact with a new species." And then he asks him how, when O'Brien has done this, how he's supposed to write up his report explaining this to the high up officers in Starfleet, who are eagerly awaiting a description of this first contact.
Understandably.
And O'Brien, again understandably, replies, "Well, sir, I'm not one to say, but, well, you know, these hunters weren't any happier than we were having to bring Tosk home. It seems to me in the interests of mutual understanding and future relations." And Cisco just says, "Save it." He tells O'Brien that he's ignored his duties to Starfleet. He removed his comm badge so he could ignore Cisco, and he even ignored the Prime Directive. And he says, "Another stunt like this, and your wife won't have to complain about the conditions here anymore. Do I make myself clear?" I think the writers were extremely talented and hated wives.
Yeah, once again, we're going to say that is a
It does.
contrast.
Yeah.
That is yeah, born in the 70s, grew up in the 80s, wrote TV in the 90s, which is, wives, don't we hate them?
Because in the only episode where Keiko's had much of a presence, Cisco respected her. She wanted something to do. She found a role as a teacher. He enabled her to do that. She built that up from scratch herself, having been given permission to do it. She is an interesting person. She isn't just O'Brien's wife, and she doesn't just complain about conditions
No,
aboard the
she doesn't.
station. But she's been reduced to that kind of one-liner status in this, the Mrs., the little woman.
Who's only going to complain and nag you? It is very
Yeah.
basic and reductive writing, but I feel it falls in line with the tropes we would expect from 90s telly, 90s sitcom.
Which I think a lot of which DS9
It
avoids.
tries very hard.
Yeah. I think in most things it does a really good job. And it just means that when something like that crops up, it feels all the more incongruous for it.
Yeah.
I don't expect them to make constant references to O'Brien's wife as being problematic in any way, because she just isn't. She's a human being, and they're
She
both fine
is.
people.
Exactly. She is a valuable supporting character. As Izzy says, they will break these tropes in future, and they
Oh,
will. They will try very hard to give every character incredible breathing room to grow as characters, not just be, the nag at home, which is a horrendous conclusion. I did like that conversation. I like that it was almost a subversion of Star Trek, in that O'Brien's parroting all the lines that the Federation and Starfleet operate on, and Cisco's like, "That's bullshit. You're hiding behind bullshit. I call bullshit." And then it double subverts because O'Brien's like, "We couldn't have gotten that far. Really, if you'd have actually, sent Odo and locked down things like you did so effectively when Tosk first started messing with the security system." And Cisco's like, wonderfully deadpan, stone face. "Well, I guess we missed that, didn't we?" And it's like, don't press this any further.
Yeah.
This
And I
is
think
the
O'Brien just says,
frontier.
"Oh, right, sir. Thank you, sir." Never leaves.
Dismissed. And it's just like, this is one of those little grey area deals that we do because we're on the frontier. And this isn't the high exemplar that is Picard's Enterprise. Right out here, we deal with the political realities, which is, I didn't like those people any more than you. okay, and Tosk deserved a chance, but do not press me on this because I also had to run against my instincts as a Starfleet officer. So let's not just don't press it. It's
And I think
relatively real.
I was genuinely surprised, though, by how cold Cisco was towards O'Brien in that scene. That I had expected that behind closed doors he would have, not literally winked, but he would have smiled at him. He would have done something that belied his words, just to say, "I'm on your side in this. I know what you did, and I let you do it. That's fine." It's implied, but he still looks so stony, and he says, "Dismissed," with anger.
Yeah.
And it's not until O'Brien has left, the door is closed, he turns to camera and then smiles. But O'Brien walks away still feeling that Cisco's angry with him, which is a shame. I think there is that implicit understanding. But yeah, there's that bit of warmth, I think I would have expected from Picard. Had he done that, he would have, smiled before letting the person leave.
I think you're right. And I think actually that says something about the whole situation, which is that Cisco will break the rules if he thinks you've deserved it, but he's also not a man who enjoys breaking the rules. And this is something we will absolutely learn in future episodes. That, yeah, I think it's a Star Trek trope that captains love to break Prime Directive, and be like, oh, you know what, I know best and I will push things around. It is Cisco who will do that, but be the most reluctant, because I think Cisco is quite a moral. He is a very moral person. He's like, at the end of the day, I'm still breaking rules I swore an oath to uphold. And therefore, he keeps to himself the thought that, yeah, I've done the right thing. But ultimately, it comes down that I am a leader of people. And ultimately, O'Brien has not followed my orders.
And there's also something of the isolation of command.
Yes.
That were he to smile, smirk, invite him into that we're in this together. He can't do that. He has to stand there above everyone else, making the rules. Carrying out the rules that he doesn't always agree with. There is something of he isolates himself in that way. In this scene, at least, he doesn't join happily with the others and going, "Yeah, we beat them. We did the bad thing, but it went way." He doesn't do that.
Right thing to do. Yeah, you're absolutely right, and I think that's something Star Trek should always do. It was based originally on the idea that the captain or the commander, the leader of this little society, is on their own. And Star Trek's always been a bit wishy-washy about, you can always radio home to Earth for help. And they never do it very conclusively. But our leader should be somebody on their own, making the hard decisions and ultimately enforcing them. And keeping that hard rule of command, which is I have to make the hard decisions and I need you to follow my orders. And remember, these rules are here for a reason. Even if we don't always agree with them, they're there for a reason. So that's why I think that situation played out the way it did.
Yeah, I think even though we've said that the meetings in ops feel less formal, having everyone standing or sitting wherever they want, Cisco remains formal throughout them. He doesn't break character. He's always still that calm, except for when he's angry. He's always that same calm person who toes the line and follows the rules. Yeah, it's interesting watching how different he is from Picard in that respect.
Exactly. And we've got to remember he's stepping into his first time being a Picard. Prior to this, he was the first officer. He was the Riker of a starship, and he always had a captain he had to report to. And the first officer of a station is always, or a starship is always, I'm half the captain's deputy, but I'm also half the crew's representative. So I'm in that middle ground. This is the first time Cisco is on his own. He is where the buck stops. He is the ultimate authority on that station. And he can ask Starfleet for advice, guidance, and orders. But on the spot, he is the man in charge. And yeah, that is isolation. And therefore, he has to now discover, I need to be a bit separate from these people. They need to realize that I'm not always going to be there to bail them out and be like in on with them. I am their ultimate authority. The Federation is a long way away. I'm on the frontier. I am the only authority here. So I think it's interesting they explore that very challenging, presumably, situation of being the ultimate authority.
It's a really good point. I was just thinking that had they wanted to make it a lot darker, they could have made his job a poison chalice, say no one wants this. It's a position of a lot of responsibility, a high risk. There's so much danger here. Nobody really wants it. We're going to put you here. If you don't go into this job, you're going to get demoted to lieutenant for the rest of your career. They didn't do that.
No.
He's stepped up into the command. He wanted to do it. When he's been there for a few days, he decides he wants to stay there. It keeps that Star Trek optimism, that feeling of we're going to make things better. But they could easily not have. Yeah.
You're absolutely right. And as he points out, it's a very challenging situation because Sisko is also a diplomat to the Federation, to the Bajoran government on behalf of the Federation. And he also is often the first person the Cardassians talk to because he's the furthest serving Federation officer right on the frontier. You know, the Cardassians.
And he's got to remain polite to them while trying to keep them at arm's length. They can't come back and reclaim Bajor.
Exactly, and they've been renowned historical opponents of the Federation. They fought an awful war,
they wanted to take the wormhole very recently.
Yes,
they weren't allowed to
hesitate to fire on the station. You know, so it's awful. Yes, he's also the diplomat to the people coming through the wormhole. Sisko has a very difficult position in a way that I don't think like Picard always does. He has a slightly harder job. So
I agree.
It is difficult, and I think that's why ultimately we come to the end of this episode with Sisko still maintaining, that disconnect, that distance from O'Brien. It's like, we wobble the rules a bit on this one, but I'm not a man who's a fan of wobbling the rules.
I cannot be seen allowing you to do this. Yeah.
So that brings us to the end of the episode, and we are pushing 2 hours.
I need to write simpler episodes. Damn it! Write one that's got no content.
Every time I think as well, oh, this is a bottle episode. Me and Pat will race through this. It'll be fine, and it never is the case.
Okay, I've got a few more things that I would like to say. Okay.
This is what I wanted.
Okay, so highlights. Just this episode is really O'Brien's. He's got the most lines, the most screen time. The script does a fantastic job of writing the character as himself in an unusual situation. I said earlier, you couldn't just put any other character in his place and keep the action the same. You'd have to completely rewrite it around another person's language, motivations, relationships. It's really nicely done. It could have been just a generic sci-fi story, and instead it's a very character-driven one. I really like it. And it's also a very classic Star Trek culture clash episode. The morality of the aliens differing greatly from that of Sisko and the Federation, and the crew must find a way to move forwards without harming the other culture or compromising their own moral ideals. In this case, it's achieved by having one crew member break rank and act alone without consulting anyone else. So it's a bit of an uneasy resolution for that, I think.
It is.
And
which is what we talked about, that whole difficulty with Sisko is like, O'Brien, you have broken ranks, you have broken Federation law, you've broken force contact law. That's why that difficulty.
You've disappointed me, you've disappointed your mother, you've disappointed everyone about this, but most of all, you've disappointed yourself.
You've let yourself down. We expect more from you, O'Brien. I'm just disappointed.
But I think in terms, one of the low points for me is that the moral resolution of the story does feel very unsatisfactory to me. Sisko's complaint about the nature of the society and the hunt, that a sentient creature is being hunted for sport.
Agreed.
It's really not resolved. This culture is going to continue having a hunted cast. They're going to keep doing this. It was resolved in this one instance by allowing them to continue, and we just don't explore the further story after that. We just know that they're going to be on the other side of the wormhole hunting each other in perpetuity, and Starfleet, absolutely within the laws of the universe, with the Federation law, they do not have a right to intervene. They're not going to, but the episode has to end with us feeling that it's been satisfactorily resolved, and the way of doing that was to say that Tosk is happy being hunted. And that's where it ends.
Yeah, you would expect from a Picard episode that there would have been, at the end, some uprising, that the Tosk hunted would go, no, we're not going to stand for this anymore. We will rise up against.
O'Brien would have unionized them. He would have said, I'm fairly lowly on this station, but I've got rights. You could have something similar. Let's do that. But it just isn't addressed. They have to wrap it up and everyone's happy. And it just felt very unsatisfactory to me as a moral. So I think Star Trek does seek to have a moral to episodes like this, and the moral here was let people do what they want.
It is. It absolutely is. I do think that it's maybe a blend of we couldn't really find a way to upend an entire society in this episode, and also a little bit of a hint of there ain't always a neat solution on DS9. Sometimes you just have to go for the least worst option.
It's very true. It would be unreasonable for me to expect them to resolve,
You would expect it from TNG, though, wouldn't you? You would
cultural
expect.
issues like this.
You
I
would
would have, I
expect.
would have, yeah, I would have expected the usual rather colonialist. We've given you our good ideas, now you should go away and implement them, which is what I've just suggested they do. But yeah, it isn't an easy question when we think that when we, the Federation, think that someone is being abused, but they do not see it. How much obligation one has to try and force that awareness upon them. It's a very heavy question, and it would not be okay to suggest that it was easily wrapped up in 45 minutes. But yeah, it did just leave me feeling uneasy because of that. We know that it's still going on, it's still happening out there, and all of Cisco's complaints still stand. It hasn't ended.
It hasn't, and I think that is a testament to the strength of DS9, which is sometimes you do. Sadly, come out of these situations where, you haven't been able to import your ideal white Western Anglophone values onto another culture and have them suddenly liberated into your hyper-capitalist lifestyle. But, we just have to say, well, at least our friend Tosk got away to live maybe one more day.
Yeah. And for that, and for this episode and that day, and Miles O'Brien, that was enough for this once.
It was indeed.
My only other critique was that on the first watching, I was a bit underwhelmed by this episode, but only because it didn't heavily feature all of my favourites. I want to see more Bashir, more Jadzia, more Garak.
Yes.
Where is Garak? And it only had a bit of Quark and Odo.
Yeah.
It was a very strong O'Brien episode, but I think he isn't my favourite. I don't necessarily want to see lots more of O'Brien right now. I want the other characters there more strongly, and this episode just didn't have that.
I absolutely accept what you're saying, and I think that is merely a habit that Star Trek writers occasionally fall into, which is, first season, we need to get you used to these characters, so we're going to give each of them like a day in the sun.
Yeah, which is very fair. It's good that they highlight, and it was a really good Miles episode. They gave him a lot to do. They really reinforced who the character is and what his strengths and weaknesses are. But I think for it to be a top tier episode, it would have had to have more Jadzia, Bashir. Basically, it's Jadzia, Bashir, and Garak. I just want those three in perpetuity.
So for the benefit of the chat, we're not going to spoil anything from Kat. For Kat, it's all to come. It's all to come. Don't you worry. But we do need to soldier through Series 1, and it will be really interesting to find out what you think when we finally get there. Definitely.
And the one question that I had for you in terms of Star Trek lore is about the alert system. I know that on Red Dwarf, when they change from red to yellow alert, it means that they have to switch out the bulb. But what does it mean in Star Trek when they have a yellow alert or a red alert?
Yeah. So Kat did already float this to me before the episode, and they absolutely have the right idea, which is it's a term of escalation. Normal operations, no alert. Yellow alert is when something's going on that we are worried about, suspicious about, and it usually does necessitate the raising of shields. Shields are raised at yellow alert, but weapons are normally not powered. Red alert is the next escalation, and as you correctly identified, it is battle stations. Shields absolutely have to be up, and weapons are usually powered. It is a prelude to combat, and is the alert at which combat usually takes place. So that is the
nice. Thank you. Good to know.
More than welcome. These kind of things are absolutely broad Star Trek topics that we will explore as we go along with this run. We have eclipsed 2 hours. We're not talking about Black Alert, Izzy. That is a Discovery area which only applies to Discovery, and we will not touch on Black Alert. But if you want to watch Discovery,
I get to it,
yes, go for it and see what you think. Yes.
Right, we've probably spent as long talking about it as they spent writing it.
We absolutely have. So, ultimately, did you come away having a good time?
I did, yeah. I really enjoyed it. I love looking at the nuts and bolts of how these episodes fit together, how they bring out character as well as advancing plot. And as I said last time, it's just so neatly, tightly done. They managed to pack so much in without it feeling utilitarian.
Yes.
And it's entertaining and interesting. I think this series would be a great primer in how to write for the screen. It's just so rich in I say that. I'm not an expert. I just watch a lot of television.
It's
But
good as
yeah,
expert than anyone.
they do university courses in this now. But yeah, it's always entertaining. It's always just, there's just, I have to, it takes me about 3 hours to watch each episode to prepare for this, just because I'm having to pause it every few moments to write down something
Write stuff down.
to make an observation about it. There's so much happens in every minute of this show. And I love it. It's wonderful. It's great. I'm really enjoying it.
I'm super glad to hear that. I really am. That's what it's all about. It's finding out Kat's impression because they've never seen DS9 before. And whereas I could tell you lots of nonsense behind the scenes trivia, which doesn't really advance the show, it's not as interesting as hearing it from someone who's never
But
seen
we want
it.
that now.
I don't have any for this episode. So I will dig some up for next time.
Do you know what the next episode is?
I do. So this is it. The next episode is Q-less, episode 6. Of season 1 of
My
DS9.
special boy! My special omnipotent boy is back!
He is. He makes his one and only appearance on DS9, but we will get to that in 2 Mondays' time. I would like to thank everyone for tuning in and watching and sticking around with us as well. A very core group of viewers who sticks with us
people have stayed on.
the
Thank
entire
you.
episode. So we're very grateful. And we're very grateful as well to Izzy for being our chief of operations and keeping the stream running and keeping chat moving and denying all spoilers. And this will be up on YouTube very soon.
And yeah, hopefully in 2 weeks we will be joined again by Izzy and by... I can't remember what her online name is. It's got a cat in it. It's got the word cat.
No, that's
House cat?
Could be. I don't know.
Damn it! I'm sorry. I'm blaming the wine and tiredness.
This is it. Well, our backroom staff will return with us in 2 weeks' time. It merely falls to me to say thank you so much, Kat, as well, for being my co-pilot, and to Kat, may you die well. Die with honour.
Die with honour, Tim.
This has been Star Trek Deep Space Wine. We will see you in 2 weeks' time. Take care.